Jesus. Might be a bit surprising. And the title is from a section of the book that we're reading for week 6 of our fall program. But it's also personal about why I still talk to Jesus. And can you believe, here we are, week 6 of Is Your God Big Enough, Close Enough, You Enough? I know Thanksgiving is a little earlier this year, but even so, it just feels like time is just speeding up. And so we have a mantra for the week, and it's a question. And the mantra, we have a slide of the mantra. What would I feel if Jesus were really here? That's a question that we're asked to consider during this 6th week of a 7-week program. And while I'm talking this morning, there are going to be slides of the face of Jesus just cycling in the background, different images. So you can just take those in subconsciously. The position of Jesus in unity has become a little bit complicated over time. There are many people in unity, especially in the Midwest and in the South and in the Bible Belt, who have a very strong connection with and to Jesus. And if we look back in our history, we look back to the founders of unity, we have writings from Myrtle and Charles Fillmore that say things like, unity teachings are based on the Jesus Christ teachings, and we advise all people to hold firmly and steadfastly to the principles taught and demonstrated by this first Christian metaphysician. We have found Jesus to be the great teacher, accessible to all who have faith in and understand the spiritual principles that he sets forth. Jesus as a Superman is here in our midst now, and we can receive instruction from him if we ask. So that's pretty clear. They were Christians in the sense of they were someone who had a relationship with Jesus. To a casual observer, their connection and the connection of all these people that I've talked about in the Bible Belt who are in unity might sound at first glance like a traditional Christian relationship, but it's not. They espouse Jesus, but see him through the lens of unity teaching and unity principles. He is someone who is not a great exception, someone on a pedestal that you must worship, but rather he is a template and a blueprint for all of us to follow in order to evolve as full spiritual, human, divine beings. And for that reason, he is called a way-shower in unity. Now, is Jesus meant to be a real figure in our day-to-day lives, in the unity movement that we're part of? And so is he a real figure for you in your life? How might we relate to him in a devotional yet different way than traditionally presented? Paul Smith, author of our study book, gives a brief history of Christianity as follows. He said, Christianity began in Palestine as an experience. It moved to Greece and became a philosophy. It shifted to Italy and became an institution. It spread throughout Europe and became a culture. It traveled to America and became a business. I have a line that I want to add in there. Before it moved to America, it went to Ireland and became a set of do's and don'ts. A party-pooping, austere spiritual path. Unfortunately, the monks kind of took hold of Christianity in Ireland and it became this very austere thing. And then the Puritanism from the French seminaries came to Ireland and trained all the Irish priests. And the rest is history. So this facetious history, as outlined by Smith, contains an important truth, however. And that is that Christianity was an experience before it became anything else, before it became a doctrine or a religion, a philosophy or a creed. And it was an experience of a friendship or an intimate relationship with Jesus. It was a one-on-one encounter between Jesus and people that changed the trajectory of their lives. And it was that because there was a transmission of energy whereby people experienced the unconditional love of God for them in a real way, coming through this human being named Jesus. Now, if any of you have ever encountered Eastern gurus, or maybe you've been to a Matt Kahn workshop, you probably have felt the transmission of energy. It's very different. It's not just a head talk. There is this transmission of energy that happens. And so this is what was so powerful about the encounter and experience between people and Jesus. There was an energetic shift that happened from meeting him. People were so moved and so transformed by the encounter that they fell in love with him, so much that they wanted to follow him and to hang on his every word. And here is the kicker. This encounter continued with him and happened in people's lives even after his death and resurrection. People still encountered him energetically, face to face sometimes. And so he was still this real presence in this earthly realm, even though he had died and was resurrected. And people had an experience of him loving them that carved a space in them and opened up for them to become a vessel of the love of God. Over time, the experiential part of the encounter with Jesus was replaced, as we know, with ritual. Ritual that lacked the energetic transformation. Because you all had that energetic transformation at your baptism, right? Or when you were confirmed, right? Both secular and religious institutions demanded allegiance to the person of Jesus without the foundation or basis of the experiential relationship of love that initially was the driving force that spread Christianity like wildfire. And it did it often at the point of a sword. Do you believe in Jesus? Was the question. The question wasn't, have you had this incredible encounter with the love of God that pours forth through this being called Jesus? And the ritual of baptism, pouring water on our heads, replaced the actual experience of the transmission of love from Jesus. Christian armies enforced a relationship with Jesus through baptism on indigenous people, as we know, on Jews, and on infidels. And within Christianity itself, the loving friendship got co-opted by fundamentalism and became a demanded and required belief in Jesus as one's Lord and Savior. The result being many modern-day thinking people don't want to be associated with that kind of friendship with Jesus because it comes with a bad rap. It's often seen as elitist, narrow-minded, exclusive, patriarchal, misogynistic, discriminatory, and often very self-serving. It has an air of, I am part of a special group and you're not. You're wrong, I'm right, and we are better than you. And you need to change your way of thinking or you're going to hell. And so we have this beautiful movement of love degenerating into sectarianism and denominationalism, putting faith against faith and Christian denomination against Christian denomination. And people could mistreat each other because of that. And so the friendship with Jesus that transformed the known world 2,000 years ago was nothing like what developed historically over time in the Middle Ages, particularly in the time of the Inquisition and of the Reformation, when so much hostility and hate became part of Christianity. Back in the beginning, it was all embracing and it was loving. It caused people to catch fire and to fall in love with God and with their fellow man and woman and with themselves. Just listen to some of the passages that Paul Smith has in his book. First is from Thomas à Kempis, 1380 to 1471. When Jesus is near, all is well and nothing seems difficult. When he is absent, all is hard. When Jesus does not speak within, all comfort is empty. But if he says only a word, it brings great consolation. He who finds Jesus finds a rare treasure indeed, a good above every good. And then Teresa of Avila, 1515 to 1582. If Christ Jesus, notice how she says Christ Jesus, dwells in a person as their friend, that one can endure all things, for Christ helps and strengthens us and never abandons us. He is a true friend. From the Catholic Catechism, contemplative prayer, in my opinion, is nothing less than a close sharing between friends. It means taking time frequently to be alone with Him who we know loves us. John Henry Jowett, British Congregational preacher, 1863 to 1923. The very consciousness of his presence begets a peace which is itself the medium of discernment, and we are able on the most ordinary road to know some of the things that God had prepared for them that loved Him. Leslie Weatherhead, 1893 to 1976, a liberal Protestant English pastor, said, "I think the essence of the matter might be stated by saying that Christianity is the acceptance of the gift of the friendship of Jesus." American minister Harry Emerson, 1878-1969. The steady discipline of intimate friendship with Jesus results in us becoming like Him. I'm going to come back to that point later. And then in more recent times, Pope Francis said, "I invite all Christians everywhere at this very moment to a renewed personal encounter with Jesus Christ, or at least an openness to letting Him encounter them. I ask all of you to do this unfailingly each day. No one should think that this invitation is not for him or her." And Marcus Borg said, "Being a Christian isn't primarily about having a correct theology by getting our beliefs right. It's about a deepening relationship with God as known especially in Jesus." And there are many other quotes in there. So as you may know, this past week I was at the Parliament of World Religions in Toronto. 10,000 people from all over the world, every faith imaginable, in every costume imaginable. It was kind of like the Olympics, I think. I've never been to the Olympics, but just the variety and the diversity and yet the unity of the human family, it was an amazing experience that, I don't know, the next one might be in 4 or 5 years, and if you can go, I would strongly encourage you to go. And 2 Sundays' time, I am going to give a talk on my experience, but I want to stick with our sixth week of the program today. And the thing, of course, that was so wonderful is that everybody there was so enthusiastic about their spiritual practice. People who were so devoted to the image of God that they understood, to their guru, who for them was the doorway and is the way shower. What I noticed in general, and I realize this is a generalization, I understand that, so take it with a grain of salt. But, however, many of the people from the Eastern traditions embodied a warm, energetic presence, a loving presence. I have to say, not so much with the white people from the Western tradition. They were in their heads. I would go to these sessions, interfaith sessions, and about Christianity and about all the denominations. And it was this very heady, intense, people's brows are furrowed, you know, they're working on something really difficult, trying to figure out this Rubik's Cube of all of us in Christianity. And there was all this debate and, you know, discussion, heavy stuff from all these panels and speakers. But those of a more Eastern bent were just more present, more warm, more smiling, and seemed to be more in their hearts. And it seems to me that Christianity needs, what it needs most right now is for people who call themselves Christian to embody the unconditional love of Jesus the Christ. More so than some kind of doctrinal agreement, which, as I say, many of the workshops were trying to mull over. What is needed is what is called a personal relationship with God, with Jesus, but not as it has been presented or how it has morphed in fundamentalism. Why? Because love is what transforms us. And clearly the power of the Christ love, as embodied in Jesus, touched people to where their lives were radically changed. They became lovers. And the roadblock to receiving this love, of course, is our mind and our fear. Am I going to become some kind of crazy Christian that I see around me? And it's our unwillingness to open up to a relationship to the personage of Jesus. The author outlines 9 reasons why people have difficulty relating to Jesus personally. Some feel that it becomes a roadblock to any other avenue, to any other famous spiritual personage. And that's not true. That was very evident also at the Parliament. People often feel that Christians who say they have a personal relationship with Jesus are not the kind of people that they want to be. They're scary people sometimes. I'm just being honest. Again, not everybody, but some. And perhaps the people who get the most airtime. Others feel that that type of relationship is too sentimental and soppy. It's something from the past. While others still feel that there's too much devotion to Jesus and not enough focus on what he taught, what he said, what he did. And so that turns people off. And again, the idea of talking to Jesus for many brings to mind a relationship based on a childish pleading and begging rather than an adult, equal way of communicating. Jesus, however, made it clear when he said that he offered an equal relationship. From chapter 15, verse 15 of the Gospel of John from the Inclusive Bible, I call you friends because I have made known to you everything I have learned from Abba, Father. As author Paul Smith points out, self-disclosure is the key to our friendships, to our love relationships. And that is what all the followers of Jesus had with him in the early times, a deep sense of being loved by him and wanting to love back. And in that relationship, they understood that this was the love of God in human form for them, touching them. And that when they returned this love to others, it was also an experience of the love of God. Columnist David Brooks asserts that we become that which we admire. Even more strongly, we become like that which we adore. And so that leaves us with the question, who do we admire? What do we adore? Do we want to admire and adore Jesus? The goal in Christianity is to be another Christ, as portrayed in Jesus, but in our own unique and individuated way. It's not about people saying, I'm a Christian, and then not acting in that way. Being open to have a friendship with Jesus and being willing to allow the love of God to touch us through him is what is on offer in this chapter, in this section of the book, to enable us to be transformed and to help us to become another Christ. Because, you see, he himself opened his heart to Abba, Father, Mother, God. And he allowed that love to pour into and to open up this huge vessel, this huge heart that loved all humanity. And he showed us how it was done. And he's willing to help us to do that ourselves. Think of it this way. This whole section is an invitation to go on a date with Jesus. You might think that's pretty weird. That's okay. You can think it's weird. You've all dated weird people. I said, we all have. And so the heart of this week's reading material is a spiritual practice that the author calls sitting with Jesus. And it's outlined for us on page 146 and following. And I have recorded an audio of this so that you don't have to read it, that you can just listen and get into it. Unfortunately, we're having some technical issues right now. I hope to have it resolved by tomorrow morning, maybe by 11 o'clock. But you can go to the website, to the unitygold.us website, and if you go then to the box that says 7-week program, just scroll down, you'll see that. Go into that and then scroll down to week 6, entitled, Why I Still Talk to Jesus. And you can click on the meditation link that's called Friendship with Jesus. And it takes about 20 minutes to just sit and do the exercise. And I would really encourage you to do this. Let your resistance go. Just do it. And see what might happen. So what the exercise does is give us an opportunity to open up a channel that could be an avenue for a more personal experience of God's love for us. It isn't required, but neither does it preclude you from relating to God in whatever personal way God already speaks to you or communicates with you. Think of it as one more option that has been transforming and transformative for many people down through the centuries. Why would we exclude that? We don't want to exclude anything that could be so extraordinary and so powerful. And this practice is also part of what Ken Wilber calls transcending and including. And what he means by that is we have to go back into our roots. We have to look at the relationships and the practices and the beliefs that we had from the past. And then we have to lift them up with a new energy, with a new way of understanding and of seeing. And that's what this exercise is about. It's helping us to have a transformed understanding of Jesus and the possibility of a relationship with him. And here's the thing. We have a tendency to think of Jesus as something separate. We still continue to think of the Christ as something separate. Well, that's higher, you know. And he was back there, or he's out there somewhere. The thing we have to understand again, we're talking about ourselves. There's only one great soul here. I am Jesus and I am the Christ, as you are. Discover your real self. That's what the exercise is about. Can you discover yourself as the love of God in form? Because that's what Jesus did, and that's what this is all about. And so then, the friendship with Jesus is merely opening ourselves up to the capacity to hold that type of love that somehow relating to Him will help us to do that. He'll do it for us, or He'll show us how to embody that type of love. Because it's our essence. It's what we're made of. And the beauty of that is then that once we open ourselves to that, we become capable of loving the way that the Christ loves, which is no exclusions, unconditional love. And we know that our world needs that right now. So I'm inviting all of us to open ourselves to that experience. And again, if we can move to the next slide. I'd like to finish with that simple, you could call it a sign of the cross. It's sort of what he's replacing the sign of the cross with. That is this first gesture. Again, ancient prayer gesture. Opening ourselves up. We're like a chalice. We're like a vessel when our hands are up like this. So, entering into the energy of it, then we say, God beyond me, in whom I live, move, and have my being. And then the second gesture. Again, moving into the energy of it. The intimate God. God beside me, you are always with me. And then the third gesture, the inner God. God being me, I am the light of the world. And so it is.